In Genesis chapter 37, we're introduced to a new character in this narrative, and he ends up becoming the main character for the remainder of the study of Genesis, and his name is Joseph. He is the 11th son of 12 sons of Jacob. And God is going to use Joseph in an extraordinary way to rescue not only his family, but all of the land, including the most powerful nation on earth, Egypt. But first, Joseph is going to go through some trials that really develop his character, that really display the character that is in him of faith and trust in God. In this chapter, we see harm befall Joseph in a way that is particularly dark. And that is because the harm befalls him via his brothers. You see, Jacob, Joseph's father, bestowed special favoritism on Joseph. He adorned him with an ornate coat that really represented his elevated status in the family. Joseph, being only 17 years old, the second youngest in the family, was despised by his older brothers for this special elevation of status, and they envied him, and therefore that envy grew into hatred for him. So much so that one day they decided, in the opportunity that was afforded them, they were going to kill their brother Joseph. Now, in a turn of events, they didn't end up killing him, but they sold him into slavery. This really reveals a dark side of human nature revealed in the brothers that God will eventually overcome in the narrative. But it's something that, when you look at them and their hatred for their brother that would lead them to conspire to kill him, we wonder, how can that happen in the human heart, let alone brothers who would harm their own flesh and blood? Well, if we're honest, we realize that the roots of that dark nature are in each one of us, in that character flaw of envy. You see, the brothers hated Joseph because of his special elevated status. They were envious of what Joseph had that they didn't. And envy is different than admiration, in the sense that admiration, when you look at someone, a special status or a privilege or a possession that someone else has, and you admire that, you are pleased with that person, or that you laud that person's character, and perhaps you even seek to emulate that yourself. Whereas envy, it looks at a status or a particular characteristic that somebody has that you desire, and rather than build them up, admiration, you desire to break them down. You in fact desire that they wouldn't have that special status, and you might even rejoice when that status is threatened or even removed from them. That is envy. When we look around and we see people in our daily lives, we deal with this. We deal with perhaps people that have been promoted in our work environment, or they have a bigger, nicer house, or a prettier, faster car, or they've been given beauty, some special privilege or status that we perceive as not having. And we face that character flaw in us of desiring, of having a negative view of them, and even desiring that feeling like they don't deserve it, it should be taken away from them, and we might even rejoice when something bad befalls upon them. Well, the antidote for that character flaw that God commands in us to cultivate is this. The antidote for envy is kindness. You see, kindness, rather than to break down and take someone who has a higher elevated status and bring them low, kindness desires to take someone at wherever status they're at and build them up, to encourage, to lift up, to admire. And so when Paul writes in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, which is largely focused on love and the characteristic and definition of love, he says, love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy. So kindness is an antidote to envy. So when you look around today and you are seeing someone with a nice car or someone at work that has a little bit more talent than you, how are we seeking to build them up rather than to break them down? When we're seeing someone maybe that has a lower social status or whatever, how we review that in our world, how are we seeking to encourage them and to build them up without feeling threatened by them and the increase that God or those others around them could give them as a result of their success? Let us cultivate kindness in our day-to-day activities versus viewing someone and what they have with envy, which provokes in us that dark characteristic of hatred. This upcoming week, you want to read ahead in Genesis. We're going to be covering Genesis chapter 39 and 40. And we're going to look at what happens in Joseph's life next and how God, his hand is clearly a part of Joseph's life despite the very difficult circumstances he finds himself placed in. So we're going to look forward to seeing you this upcoming Sunday at 10:30.